Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. This is our weekly Hoops HD report, recording live here on the evening of Monday, December 6th. We normally record around 9 o'clock p.m. Griggs forgot that about daylight savings time weeks ago, and so we're about an hour late today, but I blame him completely.
Why do we have to turn the clocks?
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Up here at the top row, we've got David Dorman, and Joby Fortson. Right below me, Matt Zakowski back joining us. To his side, the puppet David Griggs and Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org. We've got a lot to get to. Even before we get to standings, we have a couple of things we want to discuss. And let's start off, Rocco, let me start off with you here in the huge news out of Maryland. We were just discussing this before we even started, but 8 games into the season, Mark Turgeon calls it quits on the season. A very strange move, especially the timing. They were 5-3 at the time. I know they had some bad losses, but to do it that point in the season when there was plenty of time to turn things around, one of the stranger coaches stepping down moves I've ever seen, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the timing part of it is very stunning. You know, we've seen these kinds of things happen when a coach has to step down due to his health or a family emergency. Unfortunately, last year we had a couple of coaches pass away. So those types of circumstances is usually the only time you'd see something like this. But I do think this stemmed back from last spring. If you go back to last March, there's a lot of articles written about Turgeon and the fan base and the administration not being a good fit for the future. A lot of that was actually generated by Turgeon. And as it came out last week, Turgeon was the one behind this move. I feel like he was just ready to move on, even though it was a very odd time to do it, 4 or 5 weeks into the season. And I do think he will be on the job market next year looking, you know, he may need to go down a level after a move like this, but, you know, he's had a long career, a lot of NCAA tournaments, a very good recruiter. So he'll look to land back on his feet. And Maryland looks at themselves as whether it's true or not, they look at themselves as a top 10, 15 job in the country. The DMV is right there, one of the best basketball rich parts of the country, no doubt about that. And so if they get the right fit, you know, it could be a really good thing for Maryland. Unfortunately for Maryland this season, things are in turmoil and all expectations are out the window.
Oh, ex-ACC coach. I guess he should go to Cal State Northridge. Isn't that where they all end up? Joby, Danny Manning back in the Big Ten, not the ACC. Big Ten here, but yes. But
you can see by how Wake's performed this year. You can see how much they really miss Danny Manning. Have they lost a game yet? Oh no. But you know, I always liked Danny Manning. I didn't think, you know, maybe he's not the, you know, maybe he didn't have the best success at Wake, but he does come in with gravitas as a player. There's no doubt. I mean, players, you know, hey, he's got Hall of Fame, rightfully so, on his resume. And wow, you know, show off that national title ring, my friend. You know, go, you know, you can talk in straight. The fact is, you know, you could do a lot worse as a caretaker. I mean, the guy does have experience of several years in a major conference in the ACC. I'm rooting for it. I'm not rooting for the Terps, but I am rooting for Danny Manning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's a couple of pieces of news and notes besides what's going on in Maryland. And real quick, actually, Joby, you know, let me just stick with you for a half a second since you are our metrics guy. The net ratings came out today for the first time. They will be updated every day for the rest of the season. We saw some craziness in them, which we always see this early in the season with, you know, Wagner at number 23, Wyoming at number 12. But in all seriousness, you know, the numbers are out. They'll be updated daily. They'll make more sense as we go further along. But that also means your J&G ratings are up there also got a significant update today, correct?
Yes. Before the state, because, you know, one of the key components is how tiers work themselves out one way or another. We have to use a preseason bias, but the preseason bias obviously is corrected. You know, as Duke beat Gonzaga, Duke jumps from, you know, number 12 to the top 3 or 4, you know, and so you see this play out, and wow, when they hit, you know, it was absolutely crazy. And what I've noticed the most is a lot of these smaller conference teams who have done well out of conference win-loss record. Wyoming, you mentioned. Wagner, you mentioned. They were helped in the net, which then helped help their opponents, which helped them get like tier 1 wins or tier 1 losses in those cases that you might not otherwise see. I think it will give it time. These 5-0 records, these 4, I think Wagner's only at 3-0. Let them sort themselves out. It will. The committee, just like with Colgate last year, if all of a sudden Wagner stops playing and finishes the season at like 6-0, don't worry that the people who lost to Wagner are not going to get a tier 1 loss in that case. Though people will understand who we're talking about.
Yeah, let me jump in real quick here. It's just been hilarious. I love when the net comes out for the first time because Twitter breaks and everyone is attacking the NCAA. David Warlock has got to be, his neck's got to be sore from shaking his head at what people were saying. And I mean, it is a little bit out of whack. There are some things on there that are just sort of scattershot, but I kind of just want to take a picture of a scoreboard during a bye game when Presby happens to have a 4-2 lead over Duke 30 seconds into the game or whatever, and then go on a rant about how broken the scoreboard is and how stupid it is and how could the scoreboard possibly think that Presby's going to win the game. We are into the, I mean, they're just, no, that's not an indicator of how the game will end or who's better. It's just, that's what the score is 30 seconds in. That's kind of where we are with the net now. And to see everybody losing their minds over it just makes me laugh every year. That's why I wish they'd release it on day one, just solely for my own amusement.
And it's kind of like, just bringing a football analogy here with the college football playoff. Every week they announce the top 25 until you get to the Final Four rankings. But the only announcement that really matters is the one at the end of the season. It's, where you stand at week 6 is meaningless. It's where are you, after week 13.
Are you telling me Ohio State's not playing for national title?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
Oh my God. What happened? They were cruising. They had to lose to Oregon, but they recovered. They were looking in mid-November. They were the best team people could argue in America, except maybe Georgia. And Georgia's number 1 seed, I'm sure,
Okay. Yeah. Let's actually talking to Ohio State. Let's get to the conferences here. Let's bring up the screen share. And I want to start in Ohio State's conference in the Big Ten tonight, which is Matt, let me bring you in here. And it's the Big Ten we had written off as the most underperforming conference in the nation just a couple of weeks ago when they started out awful. They got trounced in the Gavitt games by the Big East. Huge bounce back. They take the Big Ten ACC Big Ten Challenge by 8-6, and it could have been more than that. And now the conference is sitting here with a bunch of nationally ranked teams, including the Purdue Boilermakers, the number 1 team in the nation.
Yeah, I think it did well for itself. Like Ohio State got a win over Seton Hall in the Fort Myers tip-off. So some of the Feast Week tournaments, I think, also helped boost profiles in that, to where Wisconsin won the Maui Invitational. I think Minnesota won an event. So Purdue beat both UNC and Nova. So I think gathering those wins, I think, helped that. And then they got the ACC on the schedule to pad themselves. And here we are. I think they're solidly the second or third best conference. I think the Big 12's clearly won, and then the SEC or Big 10, 2 or 3.
Well, let's talk about some of these big results that the Big Ten had this past week. Dorman, let me start with you. Ohio State, who Joey just mentioned, went down and took down number 1, took down Duke, which opened the door for Purdue to become number 1. How about the Buckeyes? Looking really good this past week with a court-storming victory.
Looked really good. They played exceptionally well against Duke, and that everyone saw on national TV, but then had a hard road trip over the weekend. Could have slipped up, but they did not. They absolutely went into Penn State and rolled them. There was never even a game really most of the way. But let's take another look at another team here. Everyone in the Chicagoland area was saying Chicago's game of the weekend, Loyola and DePaul. But Northwestern might have something to say about that. Northwestern, as hot as any team in the country, playing great basketball. And as I put on the website, our website today, they were my last team out. And I've seen plenty of brackets with them in as of today. Northwestern on a major roll right now.
Chad, pull them up.
Sure. Give me a second here. I was not expecting to go Northwestern. There was a team from Illinois I wanted to discuss, but it wasn't Northwestern. So
Well,
let's go ahead and pull them
too.
up. They're up on the left already. But go ahead,
Yeah.
Briggs. Northwestern up there on the right.
Yeah, and
They won at Maryland. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it there.
Well, yeah, there's
very
nothing
early.
that's jumping off the page, but I think that there's reason to believe that they are maybe not terrible this year. Their losses, they didn't exactly get boat race. They were against decent teams. I don't know. I don't know if they're a tournament team, but they're not the doormat that I thought they'd be. Now, what did you want to say about this other team?
Well, let me ask Rocco. Let me ask you about the other team on the left there, Illinois, who just before we came on the air tonight, got the big win over Iowa as well on the road. Real good win, and now has a few nice wins. And it's kind of like they're, you kind of, if you ignore what happened, that total collapse against Cincinnati, it's a nice profile.
Yeah, profile wise, I think they're fine. I think team wise, they're probably only going to get better. They're still playing without Curbelo, who was supposed to be an All-American this year. Alfonso Plummer coming over from Utah has just been dynamite. And we knew at his time with Utah that he could just stroke from anywhere. And Illinois has done a really good job, even more effective than Kristoviak's staff at Utah, of getting him open looks and really creating offense. And when you have a guy like Coburn down low, you get the defense's attention, and that's going to make a guy like Plummer even more deadly. And I think we saw that tonight when Plummer hit the game winner to ice it with about a minute left over Iowa. And he had a great game just last week as well. So I think Illinois is still loaded. You still got Trent Frazier there and a bunch of other talented players. And when Curbelo gets acclimated again in the rotation, sky's the limit. They should be back in the top 20 easily.
Yeah, and Joby mentioned Purdue, one of a handful of remaining undefeated teams. There's another undefeated team in this conference. Do we really need to start taking a serious look at the Gophers? I was very impressed with what they did at Mississippi State this weekend.
Not really. I mean,
not
I'm
there.
not impressed with Mississippi State. I don't think Mississippi State's that great. Hey, Mississippi State beat NC State, who is falling apart at the seams without Bates. I mean, there's nothing really there. Minnesota's done this to us before. Let's get it. We're going to find out this week because they're going to get into the heart of Big Ten play. You start beating those Michigan schools, okay, then let's talk. I wouldn't be surprised if Corpus Christi comes up and bites Minnesota. I mean, that's how much faith I have in Minnesota.
I mean, obviously you didn't see their other big road win at Pitt by 1, but I don't know. The Mississippi State win made me sit up and take notice.
As a Virginia fan, don't be talking down Pitt, man.
Oh boy. But I don't know. Yeah, the win at Mississippi State got my attention. I did not think they would win that one, and they did.
Matt, let me ask one other team here I want to mention in this conference before we move on. Indiana, we thought they'd be there and they'd have a great record if not for that 112-110 loss to Syracuse. So I don't know what to make of the Hoosiers. Can you figure them out for me?
I think they're a solid defensive team. Offensively, if you could shut down Chase Jackson Davis, I let them shoot and see if they can beat me from 3. Which normally, I know that's not normally how you play a modern college game, but in this case, yeah, Trace Jackson Davis, and I guess like Tamar Bates, Rob Finney, they could raise tops, they could add a little offense. But yeah, I'd shut down Trace Jackson Davis. Listen, they're solid defensively. I think Mike Winston's doing a pretty good job on the whole. And I'd guess in the end, they in the tournament somewhere like an 8 or 9 seed, but we'll see how it plays out here. And then like I said, that if God forbid if Chase Jackson Davis got hurt, they'd be at DOA.
Yeah, I don't want to skip over a few other teams here. Wisconsin,
Yeah,
Matt over Marquette. Greg, do you want to discuss Wisconsin? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, they're just one of the teams that I've been kind of impressed with. Like they seem to always do. I don't know how you can be as good as Wisconsin and yet never always turn into an afterthought. But here they are. I don't know how you can be a quiet 7-1 and a quiet top 20 team, but they sort of have that quiet feel to them all the time.
And let me say one thing, if you don't mind, on Wisconsin. They have beaten on the J&G. It's early, things change, blah, blah, but they have beaten 4 teams that are inside the bubble right now.
Yeah,
as
they're
as
good.
we sit here today.
They're phenomenal.
4.
I mean,
Well,
That's a lot. I
Yeah,
mean, and no one else has that similar sort of total except maybe their conference mate Purdue, you know.
yeah.
Good,
That-
Rocco.
And
Yeah,
as
they're
crazy as this sounds, oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, I was just going to add, like, before the year started, Wisconsin, not on a lot of people's radars because they lost so much. But Johnny Davis has just made an unbelievable leap already this year. Went from a 20 minutes a game guy to now getting the ball in all the crucial possessions. He's number 9 right now, best player of the year on Ken Palm. I mean, this guy has gone from a role player on a veteran Wisconsin player on a veteran Wisconsin team to now the man and a bona fide All-American candidate. And that's something Wisconsin doesn't have too often. Maybe he's best individual player they've had since Devin Harris back then. So he's been a joy to watch, and he's winning games for him.
Yeah, I thought he'd take a jump up, and he was actually better than some of the guys getting more minutes out of him last year. But I did not see like NBA first round pick level, which he probably would be if the draft started today.
Yeah.
One of the teams to quickly mention here, Michigan State, huge week for them as well. Not only beating Louisville, then a solid home win in blowout fashion over what we thought was a pretty good Toledo team out of the MAC. But the win over Louisville, I think is a good segue into the next conference, which is the other half of the Big Ten ACC. And we go from a conference that is getting things turned around to a conference
Had
not
you pulled
doing
up
that.
the Pac-12, I would have started laughing.
I like the Pac-12 a lot better than what I'm liking out of the ACC right now, Griggs. Because you show me, I thought Louisville maybe, but I don't know. What have they done so far after Duke? Tell me what else you got in this conference.
Well, Louisville has some decent stuff. I don't want to say they've got a bad profile, but they certainly don't have one that screams protected seed yet. But there's some decent stuff on it. They won their exempt event. Their only loss is Michigan State. They won at NC State, I think, over the weekend. So they've got some decent stuff. And when you look at the rest of the conference, if you dig hard enough and use your imagination, you'll find some other teams. No, you won't.
Well, Joby, do we where we need to dig? Is it the team we see number one on the line there that Wake Forest? I mean, really?
Yeah, have been a surprise.
Danny Manning jokes aside, the fact is Wake has done what they needed to do out of conference. You beat all of a sudden. We were praising, if you hey, watch out for that Northwestern, Maryland, game. I don't know. Louisville, I do think, is the second best team, as Griggs has pointed out. I think North Carolina is a tournament team. I think this is reminiscent. I think we'll see 4 teams rise up, and that's it. And the problem is, if you didn't perform out of conference, there aren't a lot of opportunities in conference, unlike most years in the ACC, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, it's what the smaller conferences, the under the radar conference is fine. Well, you didn't get your big win on your opportunity, though these ACC teams certainly had their opportunities. And so now who cares if you beat, let's look down there, Pitt,
nobody cares
on the JNG 281, Notre Dame 213, Clemson 154. Yeah. I mean, now you're just beating a bunch of teams in the hundreds. Who cares? And so it's about, what the ACC would serve the ACC well is about 4 or 5 teams to rise up and beat all the dregs and then trade wins among each other. And then a couple knock off Duke. Don't let Duke run the table undefeated. That's the only way the conference gets a reasonable amount of bids, or otherwise they're looking Pac-12-ish from a few years ago.
Yeah, Rocco, looking, I just highlighted the net column there, and you look at that, it's, you don't see a lot of tier 1 wins here, given those net numbers if they stay in that ballpark. But I think the team we forgot to mention here, of course, is North Carolina, what they did to the Wolverines.
Yes.
Yeah. Carolina obviously handled Michigan on their home floor. Michigan going through some issues up until this weekend, so that was good. I was also really impressed how they responded on the road on Sunday. They went to Georgia Tech, typically a tricky ACC road spot, defending ACC champions as well, and not only buried them, but they did it really efficiently. I think 31 of their makes had 21 assists. Hubert's doing a really good job getting them to buy in and share the ball. Not a lot of hero ball going on. And I can just see like game by game, they're slowly getting crisper and crisper. They're cleaning up their defense, which was the big issue under Roy the last couple of years. So I'm really starting to like what they're building here game by game.
Yeah, and
I'm with Rocco. I think North Carolina is the best team after Duke in this conference, and not to knock them anymore. The guy said it all, but this might be one of the weakest ACCs we've seen in 10, 20 years. They just, I don't see they have real threats to go far in March besides Duke. Louisville, I think the jury's out, but this conference might struggle come March.
yeah, and Matt, I just pulled up the upcoming schedule here in the ACC. I don't see a game here that I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see that game. And I don't remember ever doing that in any week in the ACC in history, honestly.
It's sorry to say for Joby, I see a real chap game on the first one there Tuesday.
James, that could be, yeah.
It's a big. You're right, Matt. It's a big game for Virginia. Yeah, Virginia wants to even think about the field, even think about it. They need to win that game and then do exactly as I described earlier, which is beat the Dregs, which they only did by 1 point at home on Friday night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that's totally sold out, by the way, at James Madison. Should be an awesome crowd.
It should be kind of a bubble-licious game, even as early as it is, that Florida State, South Carolina game. I think Florida State will eventually pull it together.
What South Carolina team are you talking about, Griggs?
The Gamecocks, Angry Franks.
You mean the impressive win over Georgetown doesn't do it for you?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, and let's see while this is a conversation for the Big East, let's see who the real DePaul is.
We know who the real DePaul is.
I'll tell you what, let's head to the
but who knows? If DePaul walks in, to the Center and wins, that just puts another knock on this conference. Let's be very honest, and don't tell me that won't happen. I think
don't
Louisville
think
wins,
that will happen.
But I'm not.
But
I'm
if
not
it
gonna say
does,
for
yes,
sure.
to your point, should we?
Syracuse has an opportunity for this conference tomorrow night in the Jimmy B Classic. I believe it's in the Garden. It's the second half of the doubleheader. Syracuse could really show strong for the ACC if they could beat a really talented Villanova team. I don't see it happening, but for the conference, they could use it.
Yeah, and plus, at Syracuse, they shoot so many threes. It's like if they hit 15 threes, they're probably going to win.
It's a real throwback week for Syracuse, actually, with Villanova and then Georgetown. So a little Big East throwback week.
Yeah.
I when we're doing the Big Ten, I want to jump back real quick. I didn't pull up the upcoming schedule of the Big Ten. There it is, real quickly, just to throw it up on the screen. We've got a lot of those conferences.
Arizona at Illinois. That's
coming up.
Whiskey, Ohio State. A big week. Mini Michigan.
Hey, will Penn State get a tier 1 win? Look at that.
Penn State gets Wagner. The huge Iowa State rivalry game coming up Thursday as well. So there's a lot of big games in the Big Ten, and Rutgers City Hall Sunday night as well. But
Purdue,
let's jump.
Yeah,
Wisconsin has a huge week in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as always. What were you saying about Purdue, Rocco?
I was just saying, if you want like a huge opportunity for the ACC, NC State gets Purdue in Brooklyn on Sunday. Big long shot, but hey, it's an opportunity.
It is a big long shot.
Well, so does Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's got Kentucky. I mean, there's a few.
Right.
There's a few. Georgia
that's not even remotely winnable. Notre Dame is terrible.
Let's get back on track here. Move over to the Big East, which is where we were heading when I remember that we had left that. And Big East Big 12 Challenge Series is going on right now. It's going to be going on for a couple of weeks. It is 2-2 in the early going with St. John's and Creighton both having lost, while Wisconsin and Xavier and Providence both picked up the wins.
Wisconsin's really good.
I believe we have 4-0 for the road teams.
I think Providence is good.
Wisconsin's even winning games for the Big East and the Big East to it Big 12. That is phenomenal. This team is doing.
Oh yeah, let's figure out where the heck we're really going to start, and maybe we should start at the highest ranked team in this conference, which is Villanova. They picked up a pair of wins. Not that notable. They got the Syracuse game coming up tomorrow night that we already mentioned.
Also not that notable.
Not that notable. Well, Griggs, where do you want to start? You want to talk Xavier?
Yeah, I mean, they've they've certainly held, sir. I don't want to say that they've surpassed expectations, but I think they've lived up to it. Really nice win at Oklahoma State, their first true road test of the season, and they got it done. Their only loss to an Iowa State team that is way, way, way better than what we thought they'd be. I kind of like the Musketeers. Big week this week. They've got Cincinnati this weekend, who's their big rival. I don't know if they've got a game before that or not, but they have them at home. I think that they'll win that one as well. Villanova, I still think they're the class of this league. Losing at UCLA in overtime and then losing to who was, I mean, they've got two losses. Yeah, to Purdue.
Which games they both had double-digit leads in the last 10 minutes and could not hold on. So
yeah, and yes, they blew double-digit leads, but I think that there's more indication that this team has as high a ceiling as anyone in the country, and there is concern. Villanova's freaking awesome.
Okay, let's talk though about Joby. I want to bring in about the team you mentioned already, though. Providence, probably the best week of any team in this conference, with the win over Texas Tech. And the win of their rivalry game over Rhode Island.
And the win over Wisconsin. I know the earlier win over Wisconsin. Yeah. We talked about all those tournament wins that they had and the good win Wisconsin, sorry, Matt, had this week. You know what? This is a solid tournament team to the degree that, I remember preseason saying, well, I think Providence might be able to. No, this is a team that's going to right now is tracking to wear white. I mean, this is Cooley's got it going on right now, and I'm just very impressed by how they're playing as a team, how they're playing as a unit, and this team. I did not think that they would be the team that I don't know if they'll challenge Villanova, but I think they are in the position. They are in the position I thought UConn would be preseason, and yeah, I know UConn's still pretty darn good, but I think UConn has a partner as that number 2 team in the conference, which I didn't see coming out of Providence.
And Dorman, this coming up week, I've got the upcoming schedule. It's a week we're going to find out who else really is good in this conference. Let's start with UConn there. Huge week, a trip to West Virginia, and then they've got the Bonnies on Saturday in a event. Is that event down in Atlanta? It's a neutral court event though.
Great week. We will know a ton about UConn come Saturday night after these 2 huge games. Going into Morgantown is always a tough test. Football's over. That place will be rocking. Huggy Bears got a solid team. The Bonnies, go ahead, Driz.
Oh, I was just going to say, per Rocco, the Bonnies game is in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's the game. That's
a great. Yeah.
There is an event on Saturday down in Atlanta. That's a different event, though.
But the Bonnies aren't in that one, Chad. You're talking about a completely different event.
Well, hey,
but Connecticut's got it going on. Danny Hurley's doing a really nice job. I like his guards. I like his bigs. They're deep. They're fast. They're athletic. Danny Hurley's got a good team here.
Yeah, and this weekend they're playing in Newark, not Atlanta.
All right, where's my buzzer? Matt, another team with a huge week is your team, the Marquette. I mean, absolutely huge. They got a road trip to Kansas State, and then they got a little team named UCLA at home.
Yeah, that's what I think UCLA, that's going to be a tough hill to climb. Kansas State's one of Marquette's serious about being an NCAA tournament team, and that I think it's the type of game you've got to win, because even K-State, whatever, they'll be not sure if they'll be a tier 1, probably a tier 2 or quad 2 win if Marquette wins. But I think it's just that's the type of game that if Marquette's serious about it, and then gives you also a little more leeway to say 10-10, 11-9 in the Big East then, with an 8-3 non-conference schedule with 4 power conference wins. That's the type of thing I think Mark would need. Where if you lose Kansas State, you lose UCLA, you're suddenly looking, you need 11-12 Big East wins, and it's a tougher hill to climb. So I think that game Wednesday is a quietly massive one. It's interesting to see. I think K-State's a little bit better matchup than Wisconsin, either Wisconsin, the Bonnies that have veteran guards that can break the press. I think the press could cause a little more damage to K-State, a younger team that's turned it over in recent years. So I think it's an opportunity for Marquette. Probably needed one.
Yep. Xavier has Ball State at home, and then the Cincinnati game that we already mentioned. But Rocco, another team with a big test week is Seton Hall. Texas at home, and then their big rivalry game with Rutgers.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge week for Seton Hall. I think, Seton Hall to me is solidly a tournament team going forward. Miles Cale just came back, even better news for the Pirates. really good opportunity to get a signature win against Texas. Rutgers certainly don't slip up. Sorry, Chad, but they can't slip up there. But I think this is the big theme for the Big East this week is Villanova, UConn, and Seton Hall are going to get tons of attention. But I think despite all that, Marquette has the most important week.
Well, they may have the most fun week, but the biggest game on this entire screen is at the very bottom. We haven't even discussed it yet, Griggs.
Yeah.
On Sunday,
Villanova
at Baylor. Okay.
I was looking past it.
Yeah. Matt mentioned that this game was quietly huge. This game is loudly huge. Villanova and Baylor, it's a 1-seed showcase. To get a 1 seed, you have to beat other protected seeds normally away from home. This is a chance to do that. It's Nova's third really big test. And it's just Nova's schedule is ridiculous. And
ridiculous.
Here's in a good way. And I don't like, as well as they've played at UCLA and as well as they played against Purdue, you mentioned that, they didn't win either one, but they had leads in the second half and played really well. I don't think that they're discouraged. I think they got to come into this. I think it's in their DNA to come to this game, despite being the road team, really confident. Baylor loses once every 5 years at home or something like that. It's a little more frequently in that, but they don't lose at home. Nova might beat them. Nova might be the only team that wins there all year.
Yeah. I think what key thing for Nova quietly is getting Demir Cosby Roundtree back, because I think that rotation badly needed to add one more guy for depth purposes.
Yeah.
And I think he's got some good freshmen, especially Jordan Logino. But for whatever reason, Jay Wright does not trust freshmen too much. But we're a fifth-year guy who's been there forever. He'll trust him, throw him right back in the rotation, and suddenly guys playing 36, 38 minutes can play 32, 33 and be fresher down the stretch.
But Villanova has gone Gonzaga with their out-of-conference schedule as far as the number of top 10 teams they play. And unlike Nova, they play in a conference with many other very good teams.
I'm going to take exception on that this season, Griggs.
And they're going to
add one thing, Chad, to this. When you look at the deal, so at the ACC, we had the exercise of looking at the net and seeing very few teams, maybe 4 inside those top 50, and then the others were way out. This is a different conference. There's only 5 inside the bubble as if you did a net ranking, but look at the other ones. The other ones are 78, 89, except for those bottom 2. They can be pulled up into the bubble, into a respectable net by going in and beating a Providence, a Seton Hall, Xavier, And so you can actually see more teams climb into the bubble, in that with quality wins. It feeds off each other. You don't have those same opportunities in the ACC because you don't have that 50 to 100 group like you do here. And so this is a conference that I think you will see. Right now, we're talking a reason why we're talking like 7 bids or something like that, even though the net doesn't reflect it. It's because by the end of the year, the net will reflect it.
I agree.
To David Griggs, and to Griggs's point, just to pile on, not even is Jay Wright playing these games, but he's going to UCLA. He's going to Baylor. He is not afraid to take this show on the road this year. I love his schedule. Even if he loses all 3 of these, if he loses them come March, his team will be better for it.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny. The Big 5 games, those are his breather games. That's when Nova comes up for air.
Let's keep things rolling here. I just pulled up the Big 12, the other half of the Big East Big 12 stat challenge here. And Rocco, again, if we look at the net numbers now, forget. TCU's 115, but they're 6-1 overall. Oklahoma State, only team that I look at in this conference, I say, well, that's not a tournament team because they're ineligible. This conference is off to an unbelievable start, I think.
Yeah, unbelievably deep. I think Iowa State and now Kansas State are responsible for that because coming into the year, we saw a potential of 6 or 7, depending on where Oklahoma landed. Really strong teams. And now that Oklahoma's knocked off Florida, although that win got a tiny bit weaker today, their only loss is Utah State. Nothing wrong with that. And Iowa State's unbelievable start. Not only did they win the event with Virginia Tech and Xavier and Memphis, but they also rebounded and won a really hostile road game at Creighton in the McDermott reunion game. So the Cyclones the impact transfers they got were very undervalued in preseason. I think there's staying power with that team. Now, TJ Otzelberger as a head coach hasn't gone through the Big 12, but he has as an assistant. And so it'll be fascinating to see how you get through all the wars, because there are, and we all know, so many wars night in, night out in this league. And the way the non-conference is shaped up, I mean, there's going to be no nights off pretty soon. So curious to see how Kansas State maintains as well. Like, Kansas State played and beat a healthy Oregon team in their scrimmage, which doesn't mean a lot, but it told me that they had talent. They won that game last night without Nigel Pack.
That was real impressive last night. Wow.
I mean, they beat Wichita without Nigel Pack, so they're deep.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this is a hell of a league.
It's an unbelievable league here, and we didn't see those. I mean, the big games were actually the two games they lost. But one of those was an Oklahoma State loss. The other was the Providence Texas Tech game. But we've already mentioned some of these upcoming games. One of those ones we did not mention yet, though. Joby, we've got Texas Tech, Tennessee. That's the other half of the Jimmy V Classic coming up here. Big chance for Texas Tech to make some noise.
Yeah, Texas Tech. Tennessee has actually done their work so far out of conference to a degree, with their North Carolina win. Texas Tech hasn't necessarily, it's a good team, but they haven't really beaten anybody. When you look at those, pull up their resume and you'll go, is this a fraudulent team? It could be a weak spot in the Big 12 you finish off, et cetera, but they need this game more than you think, because they don't have the resume that if they're below 500 in the Big 12, even though the Big 12 is loaded and that'll give them some wins. I feel like they need this game because it's just the resume is kind of bereft right now of really solid wins.
Yeah, too much big chances non-conference.
I had a feeling once it's all tier 4.
Gonzaga's coming.
You got Gonzaga and you got Mississippi State in January in the SEC Big 12.
Yeah,
Matt, you have a comment, though?
They're not beating Gonzaga.
I was going to say,
they're not beating
58
Gonzaga.
teams in Division
I'll
One.
be
The
bowled over shocked if they beat Gonzaga.
It is. Oh man, and they have yet to win.
Okay,
they have yet to win a top 300 game.
I'm sorry, guys, that I'm going to have to do this, but Griggs, I got to give you your chance here. It has been a very, very long time. There is a series between teams that began back in 1907, if I'm correct. It was played every year through 2012, and a thrilling overtime victory in Lawrence that Kansas had 87-86, February 25th, 2012. Since then, the two teams have not played. You've been yelling about it. You've been screaming about it. I'll give you your time right now. Saturday, it's back, the border war.
Yes, Green Bay going to Kansas State finally.
Okay, then we're moving on.
Yeah, and you kind of hate that they did play in an exhibition game, and a lot of good really came for that. At least that one year, it was a charity exhibition. They really, really had to work with the NCAA to let them do it. And what spawned from that was many charity exhibitions, and actually a change in the rules as to now you can play a D1 opponent in front of fans so long as it is a charity game. And you and I watched that. I don't know if we watched it together or on the call, but we both talked about it afterward, and we were like, yeah, there's still quite a bit of venom between those two teams. I don't know. I still think that there's hatred there. I don't know if it's anywhere near the level of it as it was 10 years ago. And this year, it's such a mismatch. I just don't even think it's going to be a competitive game. You kind of hate that such a big, bitter rivalry is going to be renewed under these circumstances. But yeah, it'll be fun to see them play again.
But the border war is back coming up on Saturday. For those of you that want to, Griggs will be, I believe, doing a show during the entire game, correct? Live?
Yes.
Is that correct?
All day.
All day.
From the border war.
Let's jump over to the SEC. Rocco, let me bring you back in here first. As the SEC standings come up here, we've got a pair of undefeated teams in Arkansas and the team that came in number 2 in the net, LSU.
LSU, they've played no true road games yet. Their event, their event, they got Wake Forest and Penn State. So Wake, a 14-point win, looks a little better today after what Wake did over the weekend. But here's the thing LSU did right. They got Belmont to come, they got Liberty to come, and they got Ohio to come. 3 of the best under-the-radar programs. And not only did they come, they beat them each by 15 plus. The net really likes that. And I think the net's going to like it more when Liberty is a little higher up because Liberty had a bad loss. So that is just a beautiful thing for Wade's program right now. But hey, coming up, they'll get another one of those games. They're going to get Louisiana Tech, and it's technically going to be a neutral. They're going to play it up in the Shreveport area, and so they scheduled really smart. They didn't go like 250 plus, except for the McNeese game. I'll say that's the one exception. But every other game, they got anywhere between 50 and 150 under the radar programs to do bye games. And then they played a very winnable event. And now they have this Atlanta game with Georgia Tech that's winnable. So they can cruise through the whole non-conference. Even in the SEC Challenge, they get TCU. So, LSU did it right. They're probably going to win all these games. And even a 500-year in SEC, they're sitting pretty for a bid.
You want to talk about doing it right? How about doing it right on the court, Dorman? That's what Alabama did this week going to Seattle and beating Gonzaga.
I was stunned. I was excited to watch the game, but I did not think Alabama could contend, at least down low with them. But they were down there getting boards, physical, outboarding Gonzaga. They were the more physical team. They were the team that was ready to go up and down, and they hit the big shots. Gonzaga didn't. They made a run in the second half to cut the lead, but Alabama looked all the part Saturday night, and I think they showed the country they can play with anyone.
All right, I'll pull up Alabama for you here.
Yeah, I agree, David. And this was not just this was a 1 seed caliber win. Now, I mean, they still got some more work to do. They did kind of have a bit of a head scratching loss to a good Iona team, but still not the kind of loss that you would think that a 1 or a 2 seed would have. To me, that says, I mean, to go out to Seattle and have an 18-point lead in the second half, and Gonzaga did fight back. To me, it said this Alabama team is capable of getting a 1 seed. If they play like that the rest of the year, they're going to win at Memphis. They're going to win at Florida. They might blow through the conference. I've yet to see anybody in the SEC play as well as Bama did on Saturday.
Griggs, they have 2 more of the Final Four from last year with Houston and Baylor still on the schedule. So let's not, they will have their chances, and we will see.
They will have their chances. You're right about that, Chad. That they have other big opportunities at massive wins, but I think they're good enough to do it. I think you could see Alabama on the 1.
Right.
And I love the schedule Oates has put together for that team. They have some big out of conference games and a loaded SEC slate. That schedule is hard.
Matt, let's talk about the other end of the SEC where things are going bad. I'm not even talking about Missouri's loss to Liberty, or even South Carolina, who David thinks is a bubble team, getting blown out by Coastal Carolina. I want to talk about the Florida Gators. And
oh God,
Oklahoma, you lose to them, okay, but what they did at home before we started the show tonight, by losing by 15 points, and I don't even think it was that close, to Texas Southern.
That's one that puts away. If they're anywhere close, come March. A lot of the teams that competing against say, hey, my team Marquette, whatever. They didn't do anything to humiliate themselves, barring a Georgetown or Butler loss in the Big East. Florida lost to Texas Southern. That's gonna be an anchor, whether it's a seed or 2 or a spot in the NCAA and NIT. That's just gonna be an anchor they'll have on their resume the rest of this year. That is absolutely no bueno.
Yeah, and how do you bounce back from that even? I mean, they've got North Florida at home coming up on Wednesday. They've got Maryland on Sunday. Maybe that's how you bounce back. You play Maryland.
Yeah.
But Joby, here is the upcoming schedule in this conference here. And, we've already mentioned some games like the Tennessee-Texas Tech game and the Jimmy V, but, we've got a few other interesting games. LSU at Georgia Tech, Arkansas, Oklahoma.
I'll tell you the one that pops to me, and it's probably best for when we get to the Mountain West, is Mississippi State, Colorado State. I'm not a huge believer in this Mississippi State team necessarily. However, this is a big show. It's a big show for Colorado State, who has jumped out, who, when we get to that conference, you'll see a very nice net and, and has the gaudy record. We're going to find out a lot about a conference, maybe as much as anything else. And like I said, maybe this is better for the Mountain West time period, but that Mississippi State, Colorado State has very, very big implications in a domino way for the NCAA tournament itself and the number of bids that conference. Likewise, if Mississippi State on a neutral court can win against a Colorado State team that I do think is pretty darn good, well, I'm going to have to think twice. I've been derogatory twice on this call already to Mississippi State. I won't be if they win that game.
A couple of games to circle: Texas A&M TCU on Saturday. Kentucky is a road trip to a power conference team at Notre Dame on Saturday as well.
A power conference team, not a power team.
Yeah, I guess we should have mentioned, Houston, Alabama.
Of course, yeah, Houston, Alabama, yes, absolutely monster game. Houston, Alabama,
monster,
thanks, Matt. Absolutely.
I will also say the
best game
net,
of the week, I think.
The net look, that's even better than the Big East. When I was talking about that, look how many teams are inside approximately, the bubble's around 50, the 48. Let's say Mississippi State is. If you say Mississippi State's inside the bubble, that's a lot of teams already inside the net bubble. 8. That's pretty darn good. And I think the SEC is going to be gobbling up a lot of bids.
And I think also to that, I see teams 11, 12, 13, and 14. I see a lot of teams beating them and therefore differentiating themselves to where, I could support like 8 or 9 bids possibly.
Yeah. You can't lose to Missouri and Georgia, but yes. Yeah. I agree.
Or South Carolina, probably.
Or maybe even Florida if they don't know how to rebound. That 46-25 rebounding edge for Texas Southern tonight.
And that's still going to be fine even after they lose to Texas Southern. It's going to fall to the 30s.
Joby, they need to find a way to rebound, not to turn the ball over, and defend the 3. Because those are the 3 things Texas Southern could do, and those are the 3 things Florida can't do, and that's what happened tonight.
Well, I mean, just trust. You got to trust people like Rick Barnes to do the right thing by giving the conference a nice quality win.
Dorman, let's go over to you. Are an Arizona guy. Let's go over to the Pac-12 that is getting a lot of heat for, I think, mostly based upon the fact that what the Oregon schools are doing, which is pretty pathetic so far. But the top of the Pac-12. These 3 teams, USC, UCLA, Arizona, 1 loss between them. I think I'm still loving the top of these 3 teams right now.
I'm with you, Chad. The top 3 have played great, have looked great, and I think we'll continue this all year long. The fourth team I'm not done yet is Wazoo. They had every chance to beat USC on Saturday afternoon.
They did.
They fell right down the stretch and gave the game away, but that was nip and tuck the whole way down the stretch. If they can show they can play with USC, UCLA, and Arizona, they're the 4th best team in this conference, and they can get a bid.
Yeah, Rocco, you've got a Pac-12 ties as well, although more to the team that is 0-1 in conference, not even having played a conference game, but which is impressive. But yeah, is there anyone else besides these 3 teams? I think it's going to be the question all season, maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Huskies, part of that South Dakota event where basically everybody was impacted. Nevada had to also part of that event, got infected there. South Dakota. Yeah, hopefully everybody gets back healthy. 7 players on the Huskies with positive cases last week, so that was brutal. And they're supposed to play Gonzaga this week, so good luck. But a fun thing to look back on, the 2016-17 season, it's shaping up to be a lot like that. That particular year, we had Oregon, Arizona, and UCLA all fighting for 1 seeds. Dominant seasons, all 3 of them. They ended up getting a 2 with Arizona and 2 3s with Oregon and UCLA, but all 30-win teams, awesome teams. I can totally.
I think we lost Rocco.
I think we're losing we lost Rocco's connection there. So we'll try to get him back here. But
I think what he was going to say is I agree with what I think he was going to say, that we could totally see that issue.
Joey,
I will say we talked about the rest of this conference. You think the ACC falls off a cliff, man. Yeah, and it's not just the Oregon schools they're disappointing. We thought Arizona State would be okay. We thought Colorado would be a contender for a bit. Man, this is the back end of this conference is really.
I think there's two things you need to do to figure out the bottom of the Pac-12. Look at the scoreboard right here. On Wednesday, Arizona State scored only 29 points total in a game against Washington State. And then they turn around on Sunday and they go and win at Oregon. That tells you that there are, if you do transitive properties, this conference
Oregon
is
stinks.
in trouble.
That's what it tells you. It doesn't tell you the conference is crazy. It tells you Oregon stinks because they haven't done jack all year.
I think we got Rocco back now. Rocco, we think we got most of your comment in, but anything else?
Okay, good.
But we did lose you there for a second, but I'll bring the upcoming schedule here on the screen. And we've got the huge game actually coming up Wednesday night. Wyoming and Arizona.
Wyoming.
And Weber State. And Weber State was
a battle of undefeated teams Wednesday night, actually, in Wyoming and Arizona. Maybe Dorman, I should go to you because you are an Arizona guy. Did you think you'd see a battle of undefeateds this late in the season in Arizona?
I'm stunned. I really can't believe it. But when you watch Arizona, Tommy Lloyd has this team really well coached. They really have taken to this system much quicker than I ever believed. They are on his pace. They are listening. They are tuned in. They're not overcoached. They're not slowing everything down and figuring out what to do. And the Sean Miller era of everyone's freaking out. This team is running and gunning, but they're under control. Tommy Lloyd has done an incredible job quickly in Tucson.
And then they got turned around, by the way, after getting Wyoming at home.
Yeah.
And go to Illinois on Saturday. So big, huge week.
This is their week. Huge.
Let's jump over to the American. Matt, let me bring you in here on what is now looking like a one-team American after Memphis puts up an absolutely dog what of a week, losing games to Georgia and Ole Miss.
Yes, that would be a very bad week for SEC standards for a league that really needs a second team to emerge behind Houston. Boy, that and Wichita State's loss to Kansas State. This is a rough week if you want the American to be multi-bids without Houston losing in the conference tournament.
Joby, is there somewhere else we can even look beyond Houston here?
We're patting Illinois on the back, as we should, with what they've done, especially tonight against Iowa. So then we should, by transitive property, be patting Cincinnati on the back. I think Cincinnati is a tournament level team. I'm not saying they are an elite team, that they're going to be wearing white, but I think they are going to be in the thick of it for a bit.
When you look at Cincinnati, well, if they've got a big game coming up. If they can go to Xavier and win, and they've got that with the Illinois win, they've shown signs that they can be a tournament caliber team, but I think they've also shown signs of being kind of schizophrenic and not playing up to it all the time. Monmouth, a pretty decent Metro Atlantic team, but really had no business winning at Cincinnati. And they sweat out against a really bad Georgia team. So as good as they've been at times, they've also been not good at all at times.
Yeah, I'm not there. I'm not there yet on Cincinnati. I
agree with you,
Griggs. If they could pick up a win here, there's a few teams we've taken looks at briefly, but then Wichita State loses the game we were just talking about earlier. Central Florida, they haven't shown me anything yet. There's the upcoming schedule. Obviously, the two big games are Saturday: Houston, Alabama, Cincinnati, Xavier. Those are the games worth watching.
I think Murray State, Memphis.
Yeah, there is one Friday. I think
that's a sneaky one.
I don't give Memphis a shot in that game, so I don't really call it there sneaky.
Oh, so you're the other way. I wouldn't say that I don't give them a shot, but I don't think they're going to win that one, even though they're at home. Murray's good.
Let's head back out west for a second here. Rocco, let me bring you back in on the West Coast Conference involving the now number 5 in the nation Gonzaga team that, if you go by rankings, they're not a 1 seed anymore. I don't know if I quite say that, but this conference here, you've got BYU, you've got the undefeated San Francisco Dons, even a solid St. Mary's team.
Yes, we do. It's the reality for a 4-bid WCC is alive and well. And here we are in week 5 or 6 of the year. So very impressed. And all of that with a very, disappointing, albeit they're still 5-3, Loyola Marymount team. So, I think Santa Clara, as the 5th team without Vronkic. All 3 of those losses are without Vronkic. And man, he's probably not coming back till January. That mono thing is bad.
That was a good game against the Louisiana Tech,
man,
but they lost.
Yeah,
They lost
yeah. And it was a couple missed shots late. I watched that game. But Santa Clara is solid, and St. Mary's, they go on a trip that almost no team in the country would sign up for, but they did it. They go to Utah State on a Thursday, Colorado State on a Saturday. Getting out of there with a split. I don't care what the final scores were. They're happy with the split.
No,
they're happy with the split.
Yeah,
and that's part of the reason I think they didn't have all their juice on Saturday. They were just probably partying after that Thursday chaotic win.
I am with Rocco 1,000% on that. That they deserve a lot of credit for that win at Utah State. Not many teams win there. Not many teams will go there. They went there and won. Good for St. Mary's.
Yeah. Joby, let's talk a little bit about BYU though. It's still in the top 25, but what a game it was actually last week. A incredible game at Utah Valley, but they lose.
I really believe the nation is. You saw it in the them dropping the rankings. You saw them drop in various metrics. I actually think they're being treated unfairly a little bit here because it is a in-state. Utah Valley wants nothing more. Like that's their season. Not to excuse it, they deserve to be dinged for it, but they're getting really dinged for it. As in, like, hey, I'm dropping you 5 seed lines, sort of dinged. I don't think that's the case. I think Utah Valley may be just about the best team in the WAC. We'll see with New Mexico State, and others.
In a dogfight.
Utah Valley, don't be shocked if they win the WAC. I think this BYU team has already proven, as you pull them up, by what they've already done, as a team itself. BYU's real. They're going to be, wearing white, and who knows if they can maybe steal one of the 3 games. Yes, I think there will be 3 games with Gonzaga. Who knows? The sky might allow them to even sneak in as a protected seed because preseason they've done a lot of very good work.
Yeah, and they've got their opportunities though. Here also BYU. They've got Utah State next. They've got a neutral sort game with Creighton. They got a trip to a solid Weber State team who's undefeated right now. You've got a potential matchup with Wyoming, potentially even in the
Liberty,
Diamond Head, Liberty or Wyoming.
They are one of these teams that need San Diego State and Oregon to turn their seasons, from what they are.
Yeah, they have San Diego State, Oregon, and Missouri.
That will help them. And like I said, maybe Oregon won't because Oregon's just been.
And don't overlook this one down here. They beat Texas Southern.
But BYU,
Cleveland State's good too, by the way.
Yeah, I think that there's enough. The Cleveland State is good, and I think that there's enough there that's going to turn out to be good for them. Missouri State, they've been very disappointing, but I don't think they're going to lose much at home. They went there and won, and then the Oregon win. I think they're in San Diego State. I think that's going to pull them up. I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you to pull up Utah Valley just out of comparison. This is not a team that's going to lose many home games, and they should be dinged for it. But I'm just wanting to further emphasize Joby's point. They were dinged a little too much for that because that was not it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have won the game, but that is not just an easy gimme game to win, to go to Utah Valley and play in that environment and come out.
If you're BYU in particular.
Yeah.
Because there's an
you got shipped their coach 2 years ago.
For Utah or BYU walking into that place.
Yeah. I think an under talked about point about that game was in the first half, Gavin Baxter goes down. He's now out for the season. And Utah Valley's got one of the best big mans in a mock. He had 22 rebounds in that game.
Yeah, he had a ridiculous.
He's unbelievable. So that's a matchup nightmare to have that happen mid-game. You got to adjust on the fly. There's really throw all the preparation out the window if you're Mark Pope. Not to make an excuse, but that was obviously a hectic situation. They also played that game and both games last week without Gideon George, very key role player. So, there's a lot that goes into these games that, don't always make it into the narrative.
Yep. Right. BYU this week has Utah State and Creighton. A couple other games to look forward to here. St. Mary's, very tough home game against UC Santa Barbara. Keep an eye on that game. Washington Gonzaga, we mentioned already. Gonzaga before that has Mary Mack. So should be a 2-0 week for the Zags this week.
Yeah.
I guess, the San Francisco only one game. They're hosting Fresno. But Dorman, let me go back to you. I know you're a big fan of the Atlantic 10. So let's jump over to the A10 where we've got, I don't know why there's a bunch of zeros there. And oh, there it comes. Okay. Now the screen loaded properly. The Bonnies dropped out of the rankings, but there they are just outside of the top 25 and still a very, very good team here at 7-1 overall, I think.
I'm a fan of this St. Bonaventure team. I think they got all the pieces. They got some juniors and seniors to take them down the stretch. I'm a fan of the St. Bonaventure team. On the other hand, St. Louis has some nice wins because they've played just about everyone, and I do like the St. Louis team. The rest of the conference leaves a lot to be desired, and there's not many good wins to be had, and there's a lot of bad losses out there. So St. Louis, if they want any hopes of being discussed in March, they better get hot in the conference. They've done some really good things out of conference. St. Bonaventure, the class of the A10.
Bonnies are the class of the A10. I agree with that, but Griggs, let's not forget about what Dayton has done.
Right.
They didn't
Yes.
beat anybody of note this week. Alabama State, Northern Illinois, but they still have their
but
championship there.
the one thing about Dayton is just how bad they looked initially, getting blasted by Lipscomb, getting blasted, losing to Austin P, and what a switch it was. Now, they didn't beat anyone of note, but they blew those teams into the sun the way a tournament caliber team would. So I'm actually kind of big on Dayton. I think that they're going to have a really big year after one of the more atrocious starts that you've seen. And how about St. Louis? David talked about them a little bit, but I think we were very quick, or at least I was before the season started, to kind of dismiss the Billikens based on all the issues they were having with injuries. They're 6-2, and they haven't gone to the pastry cart. I don't want to say that they've beaten top 25 caliber teams, but they haven't beaten pastry cart teams either. Some of those wins are decent.
It would have helped if they'd beaten UAB. It was a 5-point loss.
Yeah, it was.
That would have looked a lot better. It's a solid UAB team. But they will have a huge shot coming up Tuesday against a very good Belmont team at home, so that's the type of game that St. Louis needs to win.
Right.
And Belmont needs to win it too.
Yeah, we'll talk about Belmont on Wednesday. This is a very good Belmont team.
Yeah. Dayton after that has a road trip to SMU coming up next. I'm sorry, Dayton has a road trip coming up to on Wednesday at SMU. The other games to note here, the Bonnies and UConn on Saturday is huge. What we discussed earlier, definitely worth circling. And then Vatek Dayton coming up on Sunday. One more conference to discuss. I was trying to save it for last because there's a game involved in this conference going on as we record it, but it's not going to get to final. So let's just jump over to the Mountain West with a pair of undefeated teams. And Rocco, we have 3 teams from our mythical Front Range Conference at the top of the standings here with 1 loss between them combined. How about those Front Range Mountain West teams?
24-1 between the 3, and Air Force lost their opener, so they've won 7 straight. So it's kind of amazing. Obviously, they needed some scheduling help. Air Force doing amazing things for Air Force level. At one point, they were up by 30 in the first half on Army. Like, that game was a 1-point spread. So clearly outperforming anybody's expectation, even Las Vegas's. So Air Force got a freshman, Ethan Walker, playing extremely well, won the Freshman of the Week award. A bunch of unknown guys coming together, making it happen, making things interesting. Now they got to hit some road games, so we'll see how that goes. But you look at I think the theme right now is you look at the teams that finished in the bottom last year. Is clearly New Mexico, Air Force, San Jose State were god-awful 300-plus teams. All of them are so much better now. You look at Wyoming, they lose Marcus Williams to Texas A&M. We think they're going to really have to rebuild again. Jeff Linder made up for that in a heartbeat over the offseason, undefeated. They can go get blown up by Arizona. It doesn't change anything. They're still looking so much more improved. New Mexico under Patino, so much more improved.
Just lost to New Mexico State.
Yeah, just lost at the buzzer in overtime.
At the buzzer, yeah. But they beat them. They beat them last week in Las Cruces.
Yeah. This is what we used to call.
The good league.
Remember in the old Valley days, the Wichita State Creighton road game exchange program.
That's right.
They
And Fres-
both
I
did
wanted-
quality road wins. It seems like they always won on the road, but never at home when they played each other.
and it helps the resume more if they were both on the road. So there you go.
Well, Matt, is this the week that we find out about the Mountain West for real because of especially the Wyoming Arizona game that's coming up here?
Yeah, I'd say that, and even Utah State. 'Cause I think Utah State, talent-wise, coach, all that. Realistically, if there's going to be a second team behind Colorado State, at this point, it's probably got to be Utah State after they won the Myrtle Beach event and have the big win over Oklahoma. They need Utah State to follow that up here, and not too many that put up a nice record in the Mountain West because it's otherwise again it's definitely not looking. I actually think as dire as the American with Houston and everyone else. I think there's a better chance the second team emerges here, but again, Utah State's a realistic one.
Yeah, and
But
this,
San Diego State getting itself together in the regular season, then winning the conference tournament, which they probably have to do at this point. But certainly they've done it in the past. I don't think it's still out of reach if they start gelling a little better.
yeah, this Colorado State profile I put up on the left there, Joby. I think it's gonna be a sneaky good profile at the end of the day
I
because
agree.
they've picked up it didn't look like a great schedule heading into the season, but they're winning these games, the Craytons and the St. Mary's and the Oral Roberts games and the like.
Well, and I of course mentioned the Mississippi State game that's coming up this weekend, and looming is they're going to get another opportunity against the SEC in a couple of weeks in Alabama, and who knows how that turns out.
That might be a little
This
tall
is,
order.
I think they are easily Utah State. You point out, Matt's right. Utah State's also very good, but I think this Colorado State team is going to put together one of those profiles where at the end, I forget how many games are in the Mountain West, but let's say there's 16. They'll finish 13-3-ish, 12-4-ish in the conference. They'll have some nice little wins. The St. Mary's, Creighton. I think they take out Mississippi State, to be honest, this weekend. And so they'll have nice little wins. Screams bid, but probably dark jersey, but screams bid.
Oh, I think this team's going to be ranked super high by the end of the year. I've been saying that since before the year started, just because of how
just missed both polls this week, 26th.
Yeah. But they're going to they're going to go from 26 to 24 to 22 to 21 to 19. I mean, they're just going to move up because they're going to keep beating these teams. As teams ahead of them lose,
you think BYU got punished for losing to Utah Valley? Just wait till Colorado State stubs their toe against San Jose State or something like that.
Well, that is not a toe stub. No, you do not lose to a Tim Miles coach team and get punished ever.
Well, I think that's the difference. If they go like a 16-2-ish or whatever and lose like Utah State, San Diego State, stuff like that, that's the difference between like a 6 or 7 seed and then 14-4, 13-5. 10 or 11. That's basically your difference between wearing white and comfortably wearing white and then being inside the bubble, but not that far inside it.
Right. I agree, Matt. I see that them being in that, but I see them being in that 7 to 10 range. I think at the end of the day, they'll accidentally stub their toe against a couple that they probably shouldn't, but they'll take care of business for the most part. Like I said, a 12-4, 14-4 sort of record. And that's a 9 seed, et cetera. They're in the bubble and they're not going to be playing in Dayton,
Oh, no.
Okay, a couple of games to know for coming up this week. I highlight there. Utah Valley off the BYU win is at Wyoming over the weekend. Also, Fresno State off to a solid 7-1 start. Interesting week, a trip to San Francisco. Home game against a pretty good UC Irvine team. They go 2-0 this week.
Huge week.
I get serious about Fresno. They go 0-2. I write them back to where I thought they were be at the start of the season.
I'm entirely with you, Chad and Chad. We've got a Beehive game on Wednesday, and that one is a bitter rivalry. It's not Utah BYU bitter, but it is still very bitter, that Utah State BYU game.
I'll go ahead and pull this down here, though, and run through each of you for any other final thoughts on the evening. That is all the conferences we're going to be going over. And Dorman, why don't I start with you?
As we do start with conference play, and there's some big games, there's still out of conference games as we just went through that are going to be huge, not only for the players in the game, but for their conference mates. So keep an eye on these big out of conference games starting tomorrow in that Jimmy V Classic and then all weekend long. So there should be fantastic basketball the next 6 days.
Absolutely. There is a bit of a lull most of the times in December. I think we've got another week of some good games here. Then we might hit that lull as we get closer to Christmas. Joby.
I think, today we mentioned at the beginning of the show that J&G is live, the net is live. One thing that was interesting that wasn't fully, we didn't fully discuss was, as we went through the conferences, we gave you our analysis, but the number of under the radar teams that are in the traditional spots, it's remarkable how many actually at this stage are in the top 50. Whether everybody talks about Wyoming's 12th. I know that's not under the radar, but Wagner, etc. But it is the depth. It is the depth of Chattanooga 50, Loyola Chicago 25. We're going to see if these Navy 51. We're going to see if they maintain their spots, and why it's relevant for the overall update is if all of a sudden you see some of these teams run the table or have only one loss, their net puts them in a position where as long as they don't lose more than once, they'll maintain their net to a pretty good level. I mean, a couple of losses, they're done. What that does is they lose their conference tournament. Sorry, Indiana, you all of a sudden don't have a seat at the table. Sorry, Cincinnati, you don't have a seat at the table. The teams that we talk about, maybe they're in, maybe they're out, they will find themselves out. So it'll be very interesting to see if any of these teams, and there are about 10 of them, from under the radar leagues could put themselves and play themselves into the at-large field. And then that would then take away a spot from all these conferences that we discussed just now.
Absolutely. Matt, let me go to you.
All right, so we had one coach already leave mid-season of that. If we're going to see another one, I think it might just be Mike Bray at Notre Dame. There were murmurs that he was going to leave retire after last offseason. Things are not going so well for the Irish this year. And it's got a veteran team, but again, looking at the ACC, it's going to be real hard to build a resume out of a league where you only got 2 or 3 top 30 net teams right now.
Come on, he's got Shotfish second in the conference and missing the NCAA tournament. But
yeah, that's where I can see at some point, especially if things go really sideways in January or something, whatever, they're like 10-16, 5-9 in the ACC. And then January, February, I can see saying, forget it, I'm done. It's been a nice run. And give the opportunity to get a head start on the coaching search.
I kind of see it. I'm kind of with you there because I think that he has disappointed the last few years here. Hasn't been the run by Notre Dame that we expect each season. But who am I up to next? Rocco.
Yeah, a couple quick points. I think, first a shout out to Steve Forbes. Takes the Wake Forest job last year, total rebuild from the ground up. Gets Davian Williamson to come over from ETSU. And you look at what his teams did at ETSU. Obviously, that 5th year, they were dynamite inside the bubble. What they're really strong at, effective field goal percentage. They were a top 50 team in effective field goal percentage every year except for one at ETSU. Right now at Wake Forest, they're top 10. And so despite having a bunch of mid-major transfers, Jake LaRavia came from Indiana State, Alondis Williams from Oklahoma, so he is a major player. They got older players, but they all take really good shots. And that's just something that I think is a theme right now in terms of some of the surprises in college basketball. You look at Iowa State, you look at even Boston College. These coaches are getting their players to buy in. It's happening faster because they're older, they're experienced, even if they came from other schools, and they're just out playing people with basic principles, fundamentals. And I'm happy for Steve. I've met him over the years, so I wanted to give him a shout out. And then a quick thought on San Diego State. I don't think we're anywhere near the point of writing them off. Their 3 losses are USC, Michigan, and BYU. I don't think there's anything wrong with any of those 3 losses. And I do think without Lamont Butler, and they have a couple other personnel issues, at least over the weekend, they're going to be fine. Another thing is, Matt Bradley came from Cal. He's supposed to be all Mountain West. He's only shooting 21% from 3 right now. And I think that's just because he's getting to learn the Aztec system and getting comfortable. It's much different than Cal's system. Watch that percentage go all the way back up to 40 by 2 more months from now, and he'll be a much more effective player for the Aztecs.
The Aztecs' problem is a home game against St. Mary's is their only remaining non-conference test left.
It's a neutral.
Oh, it's a neutral.
And they're going to have to make sure that they are the team that beats Colorado State. They are the team that beats Utah State, because if they don't, if they just play kind of the string out and finish with a very good record in the Mountain West, something like 11-5 or something like that, that ain't going to do it. And so they need to really be, they need to get those wins in conference. It's going to be tough because they've put themselves in that position. I'm not sure that they can play themselves very easily back in.
Well, while also doing the things like sweeping the Vegases and the San Jose States of the world, and
right,
and
yeah,
the Air Force, the garbage at the bottom. Griggs, let you finish off the show.
Yeah, you mentioned that we're kind of starting a law here. A lot of teams and players and schools taking final exams either this week or next week. I never liked that. I never understood what final exams or academics had to do with college basketball. And I just kind of hate that you get all this momentum disrupted a little bit. Can't we just get rid of exams?
Okay. On that note, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. On behalf of David Dorman and Joey Fortson up here, Matt Sikowski below me, to his side, we have David Griggs and Rocco Miller from Bracketeer.org. We'll be back again later on this week with an Under the Radar, next Monday with another Hoops HD report. But thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you again real soon.